All right, we're going to get started here. Zach here, one of our student mechanics, is going to handle the camera for us. Aubrey, can you go? So, welcome to our second online interaction. We're going to be talking about lubing your bike and other parts of your bike to make it work better and smoother and last longer as well. So we're going to start in the front of our shop. We're at MSU Bikes Service Center on the campus of MSU, and we've been here since 2006. This is our showroom. We sell bikes, both new and used, a bunch of accessories, parts, tools, helmets, belts, lights, all kinds of stuff. And that's Brittany over there behind our counter. She's our front desk person. Does a great job up here. I don't know if you can see her okay. This used to be the canoe rental place for MSU. For those of you who've been around the university, you might remember the canoes that used to rent out here. We'll go back to the workshop now, which we're very proud of. It's probably one of the biggest ones in the state of Michigan. We've got, we're blessed with a large workshop but a small showroom. We've got 3 double work stands, so we can be working on up to 6 bikes at a time, which sometimes we are when we're really busy. So this is the back area where all the special tools are. And Aubrey over here, who's our service manager, and he's going to be helping with monitoring the chat, and he'll also maybe chime in and offer some points along the way. So let's get started. Let's see my notes real quick. All right, so we've got a lot of different types of lubes, and let me show you what they are. We've got a lubricant is just something that helps things move around more smoothly. So it runs from really light lubricants to really heavy. And I've kind of got them arranged here in order of light to heavy. We have a product called Dry Slide that we use. It's this really nice little needle, and it's like the most viscous, awesome lubricant. We use this actually for getting stuff that's stuck, kind of like a penetrating lubricant. So it's super, super slippery. And then we go to, we use a lot of Tri-Flow, which is a great Teflon-based lubricant. Comes with stuff, bottles we sell. There's a little straw, which makes it really handy, so you can get it right to where you want to get it on your bike, and not over stuff that you don't want to lubricate. Then we go to something a little heavier. It's Pedro's Sin Lube, which is kind of the viscosity or the thickness of what you might put in a car engine. It's kind of, heavier lube. And we actually use this on chains in the winter time, or late fall, spring, when the weather is really wet, as it doesn't wash off as easily. So we'll be using that throughout the winter. Some people think of grease as, something you use for everything. This is grease. It's like toothpaste, very heavy. And this is a grease applicator. You can see how heavy it is. Just really thick. And you only use this when you're inside bearings, or when you're putting your seat post in your bike, and other places where you don't have a lot of chances of water getting at it, and you may not ever touch it again for 5 or 10 years, and you just really don't want it to break down. So we use that heavy grease inside anything that's threaded, and inside the components of a bike, you'd use grease. So one thing that is a really common misperception is this product. And yes, WD-40 does, a few years ago, they came out with a line of products for bikes, WD-40 for bikes, which is highly confusing because for decades, bike mechanics and shops such as ours would say don't use WD-40 on a bike because it really doesn't provide a lasting lubrication for the bike. It's good for cleaning stuff, but yeah, we don't recommend using WD-40. All right, moving right along. I see my notes real quick there, sorry. So I touched briefly on how this comes with a straw. That straw allows us to get to, say on a bike, get right where we want it. And this is a very rusty chain, so you can see that this straw, I can get it right on the point where I want it to go. The straw or drip applicator is a really good thing for you should use this when you're oiling your chain and oiling the different parts of the bikes. Because you don't want to waste oil and you don't want it getting all over stuff that you shouldn't be getting oil on. If you use a spray bottle, there's a lot of oils that are sold as a spray bottle in the stores. But you spray something, and just like if you're spray painting something at home, you can get overspray on something that you don't intend to get it on. So just like getting overspray on a carpet at home or on a wooden floor at home, which is a bad thing, you get overspray oil, like say I want to oil this chain, this very, very rusty chain. It could get overspray on the wheel, and then since this is a rim brake bike, your brake would stop working. So don't use a spray oil. The only exception to that would be, and this is why we have this product here, ZEP45, is sometimes on these really rusty chains, we can use this product, and it combines it's a great thing in that it breaks up the rust and it provides some lasting lubrication. So this is an exception, and then after we use it, we clean up the rim because we know it's gonna get some overspray. So we're really careful not to contaminate the brake pads. So we clean up after we use this. So this would be the one exception in our shop, that we do use a spray product because we don't really have it in a drip bottle. They don't sell it in a drip bottle. So let's get back to the chain. There are, as you see, varying degrees of rusty chains. And a lot of times people come into the shop and they say, I need a new chain. And we say, why do you think that? They say, well, look at it, it's all rusty. Well, in this case, yes, we would say that needs a new chain because it is so rusted that the links are so stiff that really doesn't have any hope of, even if we saturate it with a lot of oil, maybe if you're really determined and you really didn't have, the money to put in on a new chain, that ZEP45 product might start to loosen that up. But ordinarily, we would consider that chain not worth trying to salvage, and we would just cut it off and replace it. Now, another chain over here on this bike, and both of these bikes are basically abandoned bikes, so that's why they're in pretty bad shape, but they're good for teaching. This chain, as you can see, it's really rusty, but it does return to shape after I move it around. So this one is definitely where you can oil it and continue to use it. Someone who's been using this hasn't oiled it regularly. We recommend you oil your chain at least once a month, if not more often. Like after you get caught in the rain, you'd want to oil again. This oil is Teflon based, as I mentioned earlier, and the Teflon settles to the bottom, so you want to shake it before you use it. And then get your bike, either have someone hold it up or put it in a stand or hang it from something, or flip the bike upside down if you want. Just get it into a gear that you can backpedal and freewheel. And then we're just going to put the straw right on the chain links. We're going to backpedal. And we're going to go around, depending on how rusty it is, you might have to go around 10 times or so until you get that oil all over on the chain. And then we're going to keep backpedaling for a while. We want the oil to get inside the chain links. Okay, we don't want it necessarily on this side of the chain. We don't care so much about it. That's more cosmetic, and it's going to, that surface rust will go away with use and regular oiling. So after you freewheel a little while, a really important step to this is use an old dirty rag, something you don't care about, and run the chain through the rag. Hold it on the bottom side, not up here, but down here, and then again, freewheel, and then slowly grip the rag around the chain, tighter and tighter, on the sides and on the top, and then until move your rag around until the black stuff isn't coming off on the rag anymore. That black stuff is really nasty, so your rag will never be the same, so don't use a towel or something that you care about. So that's important, and that will, going forward, it'll keep your chain in much better condition and cleaner. If you only add oil and never wipe it down, it's going to become a big gunky mess. And you'll also get start to get oil spattered all over the frame, all over the other components, and on your rim. When it starts getting on the rim, then you lose your brakes. So wiping the chain down after you oil is a real key step. Any thoughts on that, Aubrey?
I agree.
All right. Thank you. So yeah, you want the oil on the inside of the links. Now, one point about chains in particular is before we even waste any oil on an old chain, we want to measure it. And this is what we typically use is a Park Tool chain tool, measuring tool. You want to come over here and take a look at. Now this is a brand new chain. You can see it's nice and shiny, maybe. And with this tool, there's two sides here. So the one side is, it says 0.5. And if the 0. You put it between two different links, if the 0.5 doesn't pass through, we know that's essentially a new chain. On these old rusty chains that I've cut off here, you can see, put it here, and it passes through real easily. And that tells us that it's time, if it passes through with the 0.5 easily, but not the other side, the 0.75, if this one doesn't pass through, then you can just replace the chain without replacing the freewheel or the cassette on the back. This chain isn't as rusty as this one, but this one is actually worn out more than this one. And I measured it earlier. So you can see the 0.75 passes through easily. So this chain is so worn out that it's time to replace the chain and the freewheel or cassette on the back. So if you don't replace this, when you replace the chain, it'll start to skip and jump while you ride, and that's no fun on your favorite gears that you put the most miles on. So for that chain, we wouldn't even bother oiling it. I mean, you can, but at some point chains do break. I've broken two, and it's not much fun. Generally, when a chain breaks is when you're really standing up or you're trying to go up a hill or trying to get across a roadway and, to beat the oncoming cars. So imagine breaking your chain and being all over the roadway in front of oncoming cars. I did that once. Don't want to do that again. So measuring your chain wear, you can get about 1,500 to maybe 2,000 miles a year on a chain. So some people replace their chain 3 times or maybe 4 times every time they then replace their cassette. So if you're very diligent and you're following your mileage, if you keep to a schedule like that with replacing your chains, you don't have to replace your cassette or freewheel as often. So you can save money and save yourself from breaking a chain. Speaking of breaking chains, are we on to the point about master links and all that?
Yeah, right after, yes.
Okay, so master links have always been a thing with bike chains for many, many years. They're getting easier and easier to use, so you don't have to necessarily use a chain tool like this to drive one of the pins out. You can just simply open this master link to take your chain off. And Why do you want to take your chain off? Well, sometimes if you've been riding off-road on dirt roads and mud and you got the chain really filthy and grimy, you don't really want to continue to ride a chain when it's really filthy and grimy. So you might want to remove the chain off the bike and put it through a parts washer, an ultrasonic cleaner like this. You can get these little ultrasonic cleaners for home or shop use for fairly cheap. Or I've heard of people that they get a 2-liter pop bottle and put their chain in the 2-liter pop bottle with some simple green or some degreaser, and put a maybe a spoke, broken spoke, or a string or something through one end of the chain, so it doesn't all go to the bottom. Shake it all up for a while, and then let it sit for a couple hours, and all the sediment will go to the bottom, and then pull your chain out. It's another cheap way to set up and create a home use chain cleaner. Anyway, the Master Link, the modern Master Link can simply be opened using this tool. So we use this tool, press this together, and it doesn't require much force right now because this is brand new. And then this comes apart. There's 2 sides to the Master Link. And then it goes back together pretty much the way it came apart. So we won't spend too much time on that. Chain tool, we basically put this in the tool and you drive a pin almost maybe 95% of the way out. Don't want to drive it all the way out because then you won't be able to get it back together. But that's the way you can use a chain tool to also break a chain. So let's move on to other parts of the bike that we want to lubricate. Is that where we're at on the notes?
Master Links, this has here, when do you have your bleed for what are called riding?
Okay, so we kind of covered that, the Sin Lube. So I think we're good with that. Let's.
Then you can use the chain lube for shift cable, brake cable.
Yeah, okay. So this bike, you can use the same chain lube for other parts of the bike. So we talked about and showed you how to oil the chain. If you've ever seen a door inside a home or your garage that the hinges start to get rusty and squeaky, you can imagine the hinges on your derailleurs, your gear changers, when they start to get rusty, they'll also start getting squeaky and they won't work as well. So we want to shake our oil again and put a drop of oil on top of each hinge point. And if you grab the derailleur and move it, you can see where those hinge points are. I'm going to come around the side. Mm-hmm. You can see this has 1, 2, those round things, those are pivots. You put the oil right on top, you let gravity take the oil down into the pivot. Same here, there's 2 here, 2 there, there's 2 underneath and 2 on the back. So we grab it, pull it back. You want to come around. Yeah. And you can see that the ones on the rear, 2 here, 2 there. And that keeps this mechanism moving smoothly. And then you can also put some at the top here of this pivot point here. Same on the front derailleur. If you put it into a gear, into your inner gear, you can see and pull on it. You can see where it's hinging. There's a hinge here, here. So we put some oil on the top here, put some oil down there. There's a couple, 1 here, 1 there, and then there's 1 up under here. And that's where the straw comes in handy. Just get it right to where you want it. Just keep moving it back and forth so the oil gets down into those pivots or those hinge points. Your brake, this kind of brake caliper can sometimes get rust right here. So you can put a drop of oil here. I mean, ideally you would pull this off and put grease here, heavy grease. But for ones that are really getting rusty, this can really help just provide ongoing lubrication there. Cables, water, you see how this wire cable here is exposed, and then you've got housing this black stuff here is your housing, and it's in really bad shape. On this bike, we would just replace this cable and housing, but let's just pretend this is your kid's bike or a friend's bike, and they don't have the money or what have you, and so you want to just do what you can to make this work better. I'll show you. Let's go over here on this one. This might be a little easier to do and demonstrate. So we're going to also use the same lube inside here so that the rear shifter works better. So what you want to do is shift. Oh, that one shift. That's so rusted. You want to shift your gear up into this first gear, your biggest cog. So this is first. And then shift your shifter all the way into like 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or what have you without pedaling. And then that gives you a bunch of slack in the cable. And then you can pull this out. Okay, so this is where your cable, this is a cable stop. And now we can expose this, pull this housing back. And you can see that it had some rust there. I just wiped off. Maybe you couldn't see it, but then we want to put some oil on this cable here. Okay, and then that will make this, move it back and forth, work that oil into that housing. We come up here, you can see there's a lot of rust there. The water does get up into this upper part. So yes, water can go uphill. You can see there's a lot of rust, really bad. These cheaper bikes like this Huffy, this cable is galvanized. It's not stainless. So you probably want to use steel wool on this, clean that up. Well, you know what steel wool is, just get that rough rust off of there and then put some oil on that. And put it back. Again, ordinarily, if we were doing a tune-up or a brake service on this bike, we would just, or shifters service, we would replace that cable and housing because it is so rusty. But I'm just showing you, you can do this on your bike that isn't all rusty, maybe once a year or twice a year, and the shifting will stay nice and smooth. So you don't have to wait till it's all rusty. Grab your derailleur, push it over till you get enough slack so you can get that back in place there. And that's back in place there. Now let's see if yeah, it's starting to move better a little. It still has problems, but that will help that move much more smoothly. Now we can use the same chain lube. Same thing happens with brakes. So you have open cable here, and it comes into the housing here, and it tends to rust up inside here. So to get access to that, we pinch this together, pull this out, pull this out. Can you see that all right?
I think so.
Pull this out of here, and then we can expose this cable here, which is where you typically get some rust. So we put this oil here underneath this housing, pull it back and forth to work it around, and then we go up here, pop this out. You can see how rusty that is. Pop this out. Really rusty. A lot of rust. And again, you'd want to steel wool that before oiling it, because I can feel with my gloved hand that that's really rough. So the rust has left quite a bit of junk. So that cable is not going to, should really be replaced, but I'm just doing this to demonstrate, again, what you can do on your own bike every once or twice a year. So we put this housing back. You see how that goes back in there. And then this goes back in the stop here, the stop there, and back right there. And now look at that, huge difference. So that made it much, much nicer. Now you want to come around the front. I'll show you how you can, with the front, it's just this short piece here. But the only thing you can do is pull this apart use the same oil. Pull this till you get a little bit of a gap here, and fill that little opening there with some of this oil, and it'll go down in here. And this is where it tends to corrode. You might be able to get some, if you have this. This is where we use this one with a needle. It's pretty handy. You can get this needle in that little gap there. And that again is such a viscous lube that it goes down in here pretty rapidly. It'll go cover that cable in there. So we put this back together here. Put that back together. Check it, and it's nice and smooth and snappy the way you want it. What's next, Aubrey?
Will you show us quickly how to remove the front shifter cable? You remove the rear shifter cable to do the front shifter.
Yeah, the front shifter cable. So the front shifter cable is a little different. You would want to do the same. You want to shift into the gear where the cable is well, you shift in this direction and then just grab a hold of the derailleur, pull this out, so that now we've created a bunch of slack in the cable. I'm going to go on the other side. Hope we're not making you dizzy with the camera moving around. And then you can pull this out of here. And then we can expose this upper part where all the rust is. You can see how that's all rusty there. So then we can get some of the tri-flow oil up here. And this I can tell is also pretty nasty. It should be steel wooled or replaced. And I use gloves, these nitrile gloves, nice lightweight, thin nitrile gloves to keep the oil out of my skin. Make sure you guys are muting if you're not muted. I heard some noise there. Should have had you muted when you joined, but so then we grab the derailleur again, pull this out to create some slack, and then we put this back in. And now it should be working better again. Might have to work it around, work it back and forth for a while. Some of these shifters are just so bad that we have to replace these shifters. It's pretty common that we have to replace those. So another thing that's good maintenance, about maybe every year, some people do it every year, is good practice to check your seat post and make sure that your seat post is not seized. So if you loosen this up and this won't move, won't turn, won't go up and down, that's bad. That's really bad. It's one of the worst things to happen to a bike. So before that happens with your kid's bike or your own bike, just once a year, ideally, you want to pull that up, clean it up, just with a rag. It's dirty. And then with a little paintbrush, or maybe an old section of cable housing like we use, get some grease down inside the frame there. Or we also have little paint brushes, and we have the right width. Go down in there, put some on the seat post too, for good measure, and reinsert your seat post. And then just wipe off the excess. That'll help prevent your seat post from seizing in the frame. And that should have happened with every good bike that was assembled in a bike shop. Bikes that are assembled at big box stores like this Huffy, generally there's no grease anywhere on the bike except for maybe in the bearings, which even that is not always guaranteed. So that's important to check there and grease that. Another one is the stem. The same thing can happen to the stem and the fork. If you never move this can seize up between the stem and the fork on the older style bikes like this one that has a quill stem. So we would loosen that up. You want to grab me a 6mm? So thanks. You would, on an older quill stem, you just take a 6mm Allen tool, loosen that up. And thankfully this is not seized. Pull it out, clean it up. Clean that rusty gunk out of there. And coat it with some heavy grease. Get some down in there. And pop it back in. So that between the two of those only takes about 5 minutes. It's a good preventative maintenance to do to your bikes. It's also a good thing to do occasionally with your pedals. Pedals should also be installed, and the threads should be greased when they're installed. So on older bikes that I might purchase or work on for friends or for customers, it's a good habit to loosen and remove the pedals, check them, grease them, and put them back in. It's just good habit. Other places you can put a little bit of grease would be on the kickstand. That's kind of annoying. Listen to that enough times, that'll drive you crazy. So you can put a little grease here. That helps for part of it. It's still noisy, so you can flip the bike upside down and using some of this heavier oil, putting it right in here, working it back and forth. Now it's much nicer, much less annoying. Underneath here, you can see the shift cables route right through here. So when I've got the bike upside down, you can put a little bit of this heavy oil on the cables here, and that'll help the cables slide through here much more smoothly. So that's good to do once a year or so as well. You're missing anything else?
You did pedals, you did stem and sequels.
Yeah. Any questions that people want me to address?
No, not so far. Last thing on the list is lock mechanism.
Oh yeah. Let's grab a U-lock. Is there one handy? One right. So yeah, your the tri-flow that we have is also good for anything metal starts to rust. And since we're here in the center of the campus, thanks. We have these locks are really good, but there's a lot of metal inside here. So if the locks are used outside and left outside, rain down enough, they start to rust inside the mechanism, and the keys start to not work very well. So putting a little bit of tri-flow or the dry slide into the keyhole, maybe once through the winter months, especially, because you'll get water in there and then it freezes and then it also rusts. So freeze, rust, it becomes near impossible to open these things, and then people will break their key and then they have to cut the lock, which is kind of expensive because then you got to go buy a new lock. Most locks also have other working parts, moving parts, so check your lock and you can put some oil on these other moving parts here too. And again, do that maybe once a month on your own locks or on your kids' locks if you're sending them off to college or what have you. That's a good preventative maintenance thing to do. Keep your lock from rusting in place. So yeah, we've covered a lot of things that will hopefully make your bike continue to run smoothly and without noise. When I'm riding in a group and I'm riding next to someone that has a rusty chain for a longer ride, it can be quite, it can just kind of ruin a ride, for people around you. So even though you don't maybe care so much about a rusty chain, other people, such as bike mechanics like me, Yeah, just, it'll make everything last longer if you keep your bike properly lubricated and maintained. And you'll enjoy the ride much better, and your friends will as well. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the session. It went a lot faster than what I was thinking. So, is there anything you want to add to it, Aubrey?
No, not so much. Just that a little bit of maintenance goes a long way. A little bit of maintenance goes a long way to helping your enjoyment on the bike, and just that the bike will function better. Air in the tires, lube on the chain. Those are like the two simple things that anyone can do to make their bike will last years longer than if they didn't.
Some people ask about wax. What do you think about wax-based lube versus like the Teflon base that we use? Because that's come up.
I've used the wax-based stuff. It doesn't seem to be quite as durable, which has been the kind of drawback. What I like about the Teflon-based stuff is it does more easily get inside the chain, and then you just wipe off everything on the outside, and it keeps working. A lot of times the wax seems to leave something on the outside of the chain, which can attract more dust. It's not so much. I mean, I just find that it can get really dusty, the wax-based stuff, but it is quiet. It doesn't make the chain really quiet, which is nice.
Yeah, so some people wonder and I do too, what's on a brand new chain. The chains from the factory come with a lubricant that's really quite heavy. And this new chain here, it's easy for me to feel. It's almost kind of sticky feeling. Some people say, well, they remove that because it's not really intended to be used with that sticky, heavy lube. But as long as you're not riding in really super dusty weather, you can use this right out of the box, and it can last up to 2 months or maybe 3 months before you have to start oiling. So if you do get a new chain on your bike at a shop, you don't need to start oiling it until it starts squeaking and obviously starting to rust. It'd be nice if they sold that. I would buy some of this lube. It lasts so long. But yeah, ordinarily, you need to oil your chain with whatever you choose for the right conditions, and then reapply it after you get caught in the rain. And that'll just make it last longer, and everything will be much better. And a little bottle of this, in our shop is $6. This is maybe $8. This tube of grease is $8. So this stuff isn't that expensive. This dry slide is expensive. It's like $20. So it's a super duper lubrication that is expensive, but it does a particular job really well. So it's worth it. So
plus, you're only using a very small amount of the time. So
right.
It should last you years.
It goes a long ways.
Someone had inquired about how to tell if your chain has a master link. So I thought maybe show this.
Sure.
Close.
Get in a little closer.
So here's the master link. I had mentioned that one of the rivets will look like sort of a keyhole shape. Sometimes it'll be a slightly different color. You can see this in silver, but you'll just see one of the pins looks a little different. Sometimes it's kind of like a jelly bean shape. But if you look through the whole chain and you don't see a link that looks totally different, it doesn't have a master link. You should be able to tell pretty easily.
Some chains, like a big box store bike or even a brand new chain from a bike shop, it may come without a master link, but the replacement chains that every shop uses will typically come with a master link, and bike shops will reassemble the new chain with a master link. So if your bike has never had the chain replaced, it may very well not have a master link, and then you'd have to use a chain tool, or when we have super rusty chains, we just use a big cutter, and we just literally chop the chain off, because we know it's being recycled, and we scrap it out. So yeah, you may not actually have a master link on the first chain that you get with your new bike, or if it's the first time you're going to change it out. So some mechanics like me, I'm kind of old school. I actually prefer to just use the pin and use a chain tool. And I personally don't use, on most of my bikes, I don't use a master link. So it's also, there's some personal preference there. So yeah, so feel free to email us at bikes@msu.edu with more questions afterwards. And if there's any of you that want to show through your video screen right now, the interactive part starts now. So if you have some questions, you can unmute yourself and you can ask them maybe for the benefit of others. If you think it's only your bike, your situation or question is unique to your bike, you can come into the shop. We're open Monday to Friday, 10 to 5 for in-person transactions. We've been open since day after Memorial Day last year. And, you know, just one family at a time or unrelated, I mean, just same household at a time. So if any of you want to, we can allow you to pin your video, your screen to the main screen, and then we can see what you're doing. We can comment on it right now. So I think we may have to remove. Just click on that, remove spotlight. Now I think you should be able to pin by clicking in the upper right-hand corner. You can pin your video, and then it would take over the main screen if you'd like to. The link to the recording, I'll add that to the blog post about the classes, so you can go back and see that, and I'll be posting the recording up on YouTube so that you can look at it again and share it with friends if you'd like to. Hopefully you found this beneficial, and we turned on captioning today so that you know, if you didn't quite hear something, hopefully the text will, the captioning will capture what we said. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and we would love to get any of your feedback. You know, if you liked it or you have some suggestions for improvements or different topics that you'd like to hear about, again, you can send those to our email address, bikes@msu.edu, and we'll get right back in touch with you. Our phone number, if you want to just call, if you prefer to call, is 517-432-3400. So Tim, Aubrey, Zach, we all appreciate you connecting with us today and taking part in attending the class. So happy trails, stay upright. We'll see you next Tuesday through February. We'll be continuing to do some more classes on different topics, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right, stop the video. Just hit end from here. All right. End the meeting for all.